Told my wife the other day, I said, I'm going to take 5 minutes and introduce Linda Paine, and she started laughing. And what are you laughing about? And she says, you can't say hello in 5 minutes. I said, so that means you're going to come and watch me? And she says, no, I want to get home by midnight. So anyway, I have a little story I want to tell, my experience, how I got involved with Linda Paine, and why I am so passionate about the work that she's doing. And I feel that she'll probably be one of the most influential people in politics. If she could get enough people like us to help her, support her, and work with her. So I don't know exactly all she has in mind, and I'm very interested in bringing her up here so we could hear and learn from her what we can do to support her. But I want to go back to the year 2010. We had run a tea party, we were still running a tea party, but back then the movement was very, very active. It was growing. We had a lot of people. We were well connected with other groups. Roseville, Placer County, Citrus Heights, all over. I got a call one day from the group up in Chico. They said they're going to have a woman come up there and talk about voter fraud. They wanted me to come up and listen to her. So I got in the car and I drove up there. This woman had her husband with her, and he was running for the state assembly in the Central Valley. And the year was 2008. She's telling me that they campaigned for over a year and a half, took a lot of money out of her pocket like you normally do in a campaign. And the night of the election, she turns to her husband and she says, let's go to bed. She says, you won this election. You are so far out in the lead. There's only 2 small precincts left to come in, and there's not enough people walking around up there to make a difference. She said, you're going to be very busy tomorrow, so let's hit the sack. So they did. They wake up in the morning, find out he lost by over 2,000 votes. His lead disappeared, and he lost by over 2,000 votes. So she went on to explain that she's a mathematician. In fact, I think she was a school teacher at a local high school up there. She decided these numbers just don't jive, and she wanted to figure out exactly what went wrong. So on the weekends and on her days off, she took off and started interviewing people, seeing and looking at data and so forth. She came across a guy that said he was an illegal immigrant working on a farm. He said that 2 days before the election, a representative from United Farm Workers came up to him and says, we're going to send a van here 6 o'clock in the morning and pick you up because we need you to vote. He said, well, I can't vote. I'm not a citizen. This guy turns around and says, oh, not a problem. The more you vote, the better chance you have of becoming a citizen. And he says, no, I'm sorry. I don't want to do this. So under the threat of being deported by him, this guy decides, okay, I'm going to do it. The van picks him up 6 o'clock in the morning, right on time. He got in the van. He said it was loaded with people exactly like him, illegal immigrants, farm workers. Now, because they're union and they follow the rules, every 2 hours they would stop, had coffee and donuts at rest stops and parks, gave them lunch, gave them dinner. He didn't get back home till 9 o'clock at night. When he reached in his pocket, he pulled out the little tags and said, I voted. He counted them. 19 times he voted that day. All over different polling places. Now, she went on and explained about low propensity voters, how they do it. They use the names that are on the, like this guy said, they gave him a tag, a piece of paper with a name. He had to memorize the name and so forth. Each polling place as they're driving from polling place to polling place. Now, a few months after that, Deborah Jackson called me up. She was running a Placer County Tea Party here, and she says, we're going to have Linda Paine come up, and I want you to meet her. What impressed me about Linda Paine is she didn't just talk about voter fraud, but this lady had a plan. She actually had an idea what she wanted to do by organizing the different tea parties and training us to be poll watchers. Now, with the information that she gave me, along with the information I received by this woman up here in Chico, I went out in 2010 and 2012 and became a poll watcher. Many of our group here, Phyllis, Carol, we all went out there, Sacramento area. I can't say I actually seen vans pull in loaded with undocumented illegals or anybody coming in. What I can tell you is this: in my heart, in my gut, I know I stopped many of buses and many of vans from coming in. And just to give you one example, in 2012, we went down in front of a fire station, a converted fire station. Was a polling place. There's this guy that's walking up and down. He's got a long trench coat on, and we're looking at him from across the street. And he's going up and down the street, looking up and down the street. He's got a cell phone in his hand. I walk across the street, walk behind him, and I've got a clipboard in my hand that says poll watcher, poll observer, whatever the official thing was. And it was almost comical if it wasn't so criminal. He turns around like this, and he just almost snapped his neck when he seen that sign. He grabs that phone and he goes trotting down the street. Goes to the end of the corner, and he's hiding behind a bush, and he's looking like this as if I can't see him. Then he goes out across the street, and he's looking at me like this on the phone. Suddenly, two people come out of the middle of nowhere, a guy and a gal. They come racing up to me. Who are you? I said, what do you mean, who am I? What are you doing here? I said, I'm a poll observer. You work for a big organization? I said, yeah, it's fairly big. A lot of people like you in the area? And I said, yeah, about 2,000 of us. And he said, really? He said, how long are you going to stay? And I said, well, I don't know. I said, they move us around, we'll leave, someone else will come in. You're kidding. I said, who are you? He said, oh, we're with the union, get out the vote. I'm thinking in my mind, yeah, I know how you guys are getting out the vote. So they go to the other side of the driveway. The woman is like this, looking up and down the street, and this guy's on a cell phone. So I got two people now on cell phones. I don't know if they're connected or not. But this will give you an idea of what it's like out there. We have to stop this. And I think this woman may have the answers for us, because if she doesn't, nobody does. And what goes in California doesn't stay here. We have the most electoral votes, most congressional seats. So, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to bring her up here. Before I do that, there's two interesting people in the crowd. There's two interesting people in the crowd I want to introduce. And then I want to do the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll bring her up. A good friend of mine, Tim McMahon. He's a volunteer with the California Rifle and Pistol Association, and he works as hard on defending our Second Amendment. And I got to get the title right. This is Mr. Ryan Ronco. He is the county clerk recorder, register of voters here in Placer County. He is the man that's in charge of our ballot. I am so appreciative that he has taken the time to come out and take a serious interest in this, because I don't see any elected officials doing it. So with that, next election day, okay? Let's make the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm sorry, I got my mind working on 3 or 4. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of Election Integrity, Linda Paine.
This one? Well, maybe. Okay. Thank you all for being here. This is such an honor to be with you, because this lawsuit was a win not only for those of us working at the board level and the data team level and the research level. This was a win for you. And as I go through walking you through the lawsuit, all the steps, why it was so important, I want to be able to have you in this room raise your hand if you have observed the polls for Election Integrity Project at any time, 2012, 14, 16. You are all heroes because you went out even when nobody said it could be done, when people said it didn't matter. And sometimes we wondered, why do we keep doing this? Because we can't seem to get anything done in California. But thankfully we all did. We knew what we were looking at. Thank you to observe the polls at any time from 2012 going forward. We know among the states, we've lost many of our volunteers who have chosen to move or had to move. Lots of reasons, but many of you fought that fight in the beginning when we drove up the state, talking to groups and saying, we've got this idea, we don't know what's going on, we've got a bad feeling about what we observed in 2010, just as citizens going out to take a look at what was going on. Little did we know that we were in the northern counties with this idea of wondering, how in the world do our legislators turn off water to our farmlands? That was puzzling to us in the southern counties. And we wondered also why we didn't know that was a battle. As I drove up the state and talked to groups, not only was it a puzzle, but it was a serious problem because you can't water crops without water. So that is what ignited us to begin to meet in the southern counties with people in 9 of the 10 southern counties. Every 2 weeks we met in Pasadena to compare notes. We started looking at the rural areas of our southern counties to see if we were having the same types of legislation passed at the county level. Regarding the water and the farmlands. And sure enough, we were. And that caused us such great concern that we decided we better go find out what's happening in the election process and find out why we can't seem to vote out people who would turn off water to farmlands. So that's what started this. We saw a YouTube from a gal named Catherine Engelbrecht out in Texas. True the Vote, she had the idea long before we did. They observed the polls in the Houston area and were able to take action. So that's how we started. She let me fly down to Texas. She mentored me on what they were doing. And then we needed to come up to California and figure out how to do it here. So the long and the short of it is we've been at this for 8 years. We have provided our documentation to as many registrars as we can, to the Secretary of State, to the Department, to the DA's offices in many of the counties, especially in the South. All with no action taken on the documentation. In fact, it was so disappointing and difficult for us because many thought that we weren't getting the job done. The reality is the documentation that we had was so substantive and it was done properly that it's the one reason why we didn't quit. We needed to have attorneys take action on the documentation. That's how it works. We are not law enforcement and we're not a law firm. We are document gatherers. The way we started in 2011, we retained J. Christian Adams. He is a federal election law attorney who worked for the Department of Justice. And he resigned from the Department of Justice after the issue with the New Black Panthers many years ago. He was the one who was supposed to prosecute that case. And he was told by the DOJ that there really was no case and they weren't going to prosecute it. His solution was to resign from the DOJ and start his own law firm. So we retained him in 2011 to sort of teach us how to do what we were about to do. And that's how our foundation was built. Our first board members included an attorney retired of 40 years, an attorney who practiced for 40 years who had retired, a paralegal who had worked with him for 40 years and had retired. So, and then Deborah Jackson, you all know Deborah Jackson. She understands law enforcement and how to document evidence so that it can go through the courts and actually be submitted as evidence. Everything we did in 2011 was to build a ship and sail it at the same time, because what we were about to do was unprecedented. It had never been done in the state of California, but we knew that it had to be done. And as we traveled in 2011, brought this idea to citizens all over the state, we were pleased to see that citizens across the state had the same idea, the same concerns, and they were willing to step forward with us, even though the ship wasn't completely built yet, but to say, we like this idea, we'll get involved, and if you train us, we'll go out and do it. So we spent 2011 and the first part of 2012 building the very first training material in California. We worked with a law firm to make sure that we knew what the election laws were. Our first board meeting, Susan Morris, I know some of you may know her, she showed up at the first board meeting with a box of books, each one 3 inches thick. It said, California election codes.
Holy cow.
And we all started laughing. And she said, this is no joke. If we don't learn this, there's no point going forward. That's the first thing we did, is study that book and learn what are California's election laws. And our goal was to determine, is California complying with the state election codes and the Help America Vote Act and the National Voter Registration Act, which are federal election laws. So that was the goal. And then our first shot was, if there's non-compliance, let's get that information to the registrars, because we're assuming they want to do a good job, and they're one person, maybe they don't have enough eyes on the process. So that was the goal. So 8 years later, here we are, and I'm going to start by talking about the lawsuit. That's what everyone wants to know. Where's my clicker? What is the lawsuit? How did it happen? We put out our own press release. This is the title. It's on our website, www.eip-ca.com. And we put it on our website because for some reason the media won't carry it. We have a handful of small media outlets who are pushing it out, but they're not carrying it. And many of the journalists that I sent it to say they didn't receive it. So we thought the best thing to do is go back to what we did in 2011 and drive and meet with citizens. And so Dan, I want to thank you for pulling this together. This actually was a last minute idea, and Dan stepped up to the Some of this I'm going to read directly because it's right from the agreement, the settlement agreement. I want to make sure I get it right. The lawsuit itself was filed in 2017. We, after the 2016 election, were so frustrated because by 2016, with no action being taken to credible evidence and documentation, we began to see actual criminal activity. And when I mean criminal activity, this was one southern county where one of our observers went to the polls to vote, and 3 men were sitting at a table with the voted ballots. These are not the ballots that are in an envelope, a vote by mail or a provisional envelope. These were the voted ballots. And they were sorting through them and putting them in one of 3 open cardboard boxes. So our observer stepped out and said, can I take pictures? Because we don't take pictures normally. We had 2 pro bono attorneys working with us, and I called one of them, and he said, if she believes a crime is being committed, you can take pictures. So I called her, and she did exactly that. The second pro bono attorney I had was actually in the offices of that county. So I called her. She went into the county counsel's office. She went into the registrar's office. She went into the DA's office and told them what I described to her and asked, would someone please go to that location and see what's going on? My observer stood in front of the car that these 3 men drove to for 4 hours, waiting for someone to come. In 4 hours, no one came. We called LA Times and said, if you want to see with your own eyes, come to this polling location. It's happening. For 4 hours, no media came. A police officer came, and we were thrilled with that because we were able to have our attorney speak directly with the police officer who was watching this himself and very alarmed. And our attorney explained to him that as citizens in California, we have the right to observe every aspect of the electoral process, to ask questions and to receive answers. We have laws and rules we have to follow. We cannot interfere with an election, and we're very careful not to do that. In fact, I've only had 5 complaints in 8 years. And when we have a complaint from an observer who gets a little bit too involved or causes a problem, our coordinators drive over and remove them immediately, and they're not allowed to volunteer with us again. We take the laws very seriously because we want and hope California to take the law seriously. Well, the bottom line is, after 4 hours, this poor woman was so distraught. The police officer was very bothered because we'd asked him, can you do something about it? He said it's not his jurisdiction. He cannot. And there we sat, waiting for someone to come. So at the end of the 2016 election, we decided we have got to do something serious. We contacted Christian Adams, and he said it's time to start to publicize your research, not the raw data, but the research. We've never done that before because we'd always hoped to work directly with California. So we put out our first press release in 2017 indicating that the LA County the state voter rolls had between 3 and 4 million inactive registrants on the voter rolls. That LA County alone had over 1 million inactive registrants on the voter rolls. we identified and named the 8 counties that had over 100%. And of course, we listed all the counties as to where they were at in the percentage of people registered to vote above those who were eligible to vote in the counties. The result of that is Judicial Watch contacted us and asked about our research and our data and how we do it in the report. And we spent 2 different meetings for quite some time with the attorneys explaining what we do and how we do it. And after that, they asked if we would consider being a defendant, or a plaintiff, I mean, in a lawsuit to compel the Secretary of State and the LA County Registrar to follow the National Voter Registration Act Section 8 mandate to maintain an accurate voter list. And so we did. And that's when this journey began. So I want to, the documentation we had was so compelling that the result was not a case that went all the way to a court where the courts compelled action so that it was done in such a way that it could be overturned. What ended up happening was an agreement was made between Mr. Padilla and Mr. Logan's attorneys and our Judicial Watch attorneys to begin compliance with the mandate. The final clincher, in addition to our documentation, was the Hustad, it's a Supreme Court case ruling out of, I believe it's Ohio, which made sure that the wording from the NVRA was clear, that it says you must remove the inactives. So I'm going to get to a slide later on that tells you what California has been doing for 20 years. So we retained Judicial Watch in 2017, and we believe this is the first steps to citizens being able to regain faith and confidence in the outcome of California's elections. Here's what the agreement is all about. So number 1, it requires Dean Logan, the LA County Registrar, to immediately follow federal mandates identifying and removing the deceased, those who have moved, and several other categories of ineligible registrants, which for LA County adds up to about 1.5 million. All registrants on the LA County inactive file of registered voters, now currently scheduled to be canceled after a waiting period, must be mailed an address confirmation notice by March 4th, 2019. LA County must make an effort to determine by February 4th, 2019, which of the inactive registrants must be canceled. The registrants that have not responded to the notice and who have been on the inactive file for a period of time, that includes 1 general election, shall be canceled within 90 days following the next general election. So the mandates for what the LA County must do are very clear and very specified. All of this is in the actual agreement, which we have put on our website. So if you would actually like to read not only the lawsuit itself, but also the agreement, you can go to www.eip-ca.com and download it. It's in a PDF version, and that will help you to read all the details. The important thing is this also requires Mr. Padilla, the Secretary of State, to see that similar actions are taken by each county registrar throughout the county. They must also update the California NVRA manual to include that counties now must remove the inactives. In our time, we have talked to many frustrated registrars who have really wanted to do a good job and make sure things were up to speed. And there are some who really don't seem to care too much, but the ones that do have indicated frustration at the difficulty that they have in trying to do their job due to some of the California laws and the memorandums and the way this NVRA has been interpreted. So we're excited for those who've been trying to do a good job and having difficulty. This is the Section 8, National Voter Registration. This Section 8 requires states to reasonably maintain state and county voter registration rolls. Our case was an exceptionally strong case. Our lawyers told us it was the strongest NVRA case in the country. And that is because it was 8 years of documented evidence. We had been purchasing county voter rolls and the state voter rolls. We purchased the Department of Health records. We compare them. We have a data team that has figured out ways to run queries that help get to the bottom of what we're seeing. And that helped us to provide not only just immediate data, but a pattern of data that helped the judge to see a consistent issue that was not specific to LA County, but it was systemic throughout the state, which indicated that the problem was also the statewide database. Oh, the other reason it was exceptionally strong is in the early stages of the case, I was informed by one of our attorneys that there were 4 organizations that wanted to join the case and be co-defendants with Mr. Padilla and Mr. Logan. As soon as they named the 4 organizations, I provided immediate documentation of our understanding of 2 of those organizations. And what I mean by that is in one of these counties that we work with, in our work, we run the data, the voter roll data, and if we see duplicates, we then are authorized to look at the hard copy voter registration affidavit. In this one county, we had 200 sets of duplicates, almost exact matches. And that's what we run, the almost matches. So we met with the county registrar, the county's voter fraud department, the fraud department for the whole county, and 2 investigators from the DA. I had one of my analysts with me who helped do that work, and then one of our pro bono attorneys. And we sat with this group and we said, here's our concern. We want you to take a look at these documented duplications of how this is happening, because we've been told all through 2012 and 13, as we approached registrars who had a large number of duplications, that it was just those voters, they didn't realize they had already registered to vote. And when we talked to the voters, they'd say, I don't know if I registered to vote again. So we were able to actually bring to them what's actually happening in some of these duplications. So here was the match, John Doe, but each had a middle initial or name. So John R. Doe or John Raymond Doe. But it was signed by the person who did the duplication. The penmanship, everything was exactly the same, signed by that person's name who duplicated it. The concerning part, it was also stamped by the organization that hired them to do that. So we asked the DAs at that point, can we open an investigation into these 200 sets of duplicates? And the DA said, no, you can't. You can't because we can't prosecute. And we can't prosecute because we can't prove intent. And we can't prove intent because the person who created the duplication signed their own name and the company is stamped on the document. So when we ask that person, they're going to say, I didn't know I was committing fraud or crime, this is what my boss told me to do. And when we ask the company or the organization, they're going to say, we would never do that, our policies and procedures prohibit that. So that creates the doubt, and that creates the possibility to duplicate people's voter registrations by slightly adjusting the name and slightly adjusting the birth date from 2/20 to 2/12, same year, or sometimes even a different year, but registered at the same domicile, the place where they live. But the duplicated materials end up going to a post office box where they are harvested. And in 2014, we documented exactly that by having post office box store managers contacting us, asking what do they do with the post office box that had 50 vote-by-mail ballots left in it after the 2014 election. Another had a box with 100. All we could tell them was contact the registrar. We're not law enforcement and we're not a law firm, but it gave us a clue as to what might be happening. So I provided that information to our attorney. The attorney provided it to the judge, who immediately said they cannot allow these 4 organizations to join the case because they're part of the problem. And we had documentation that they were part of the problem. And that is the value of the observations program. The information provided by 9,000 citizens that we've trained in 8 years to go to the polls, document what's going on, helped us to put together what we call sort of a jigsaw puzzle of all the little pieces of evidence that came together to begin to paint a picture about what's happening in California's selection process. All right, now, how in the world did this happen? This came about because the U.S. Department of Justice gave California a pass on following the NVRA voter roll maintenance mandate. And the result was that California was not held accountable for failure to maintain its voter list for over 20 years.
Imagine that.
And that is because the interpretation of the NVRA mandate, by interpreting it, you may remove them. By and large, California chose not to remove them. We don't know every single county and what their specific issues were, but we know statewide. That's what our attorneys told us, that it was, and that was part of why the judge was so stunned. 20 years of almost no removal of inactives resulted in 3 to 4 million on the voter rolls statewide. Some counties, of course, have much more. Some counties much fewer. But it doesn't matter if you've got a large county like LA County with 1.5 million. It doesn't matter how clean your voter rolls are here in Placer County, because LA County is going to make the final determination on all kinds of issues. The terms of the settlement include that Mr. Padilla and Mr. Logan are required to make regular reports of their corrective actions and the results. They need to make a report of their progress and their compliance to Judicial Watch, who will then provide us with those reports, because we will be the ones following up and ensuring that they're taking action. This whole mandate is subject to enforcement by the federal judge who ruled on this. So that court, that federal court in Central California, the LA district area, will stay open. Where most of these cases, when the agreements are made, it's a done deal, the judge is done with it, goes on to the next. This judge was so appalled that he kept the door open for that court, because EIP-Ca has already begun the process of determining a baseline to determine if inactives are in fact being removed as was mandated by the agreement. So EIP-Ca will validate and research the data. What we're doing even now, because of our concern about what happened in the 2018 election, we have the data from the just before the primary, so March, April. We have, and we are very private. Anyway, and this is what the judge really liked. We do not sell, lease, provide, make public any of the raw data. We have our own server. It doesn't go in the cloud. We have our own security and our own security procedures. It is the highest level of security we can provide to ensure, number one, that everyone's voter information is protected, and number two, that the research and the raw data that we're working with cannot be hacked. So we even have a guy who has put all kinds of security in place and monitors it for any attempt to hack that information so that it's protected. Okay. So let's go on to the next. What are inactives? A lot of folks have asked, well, so what, they're on the inactive, what can happen, what's the problem with that? Here's the issue. Inactive registrants who may not be legitimate registrants are actually still eligible to vote by virtue of not being removed from the voter roll database. All that has to be done is for someone to send a vote by mail ballot to a person on the inactive list to a post office box, where then they will pick it up and mail it in. And we have documentation of that as well through our observations program. And that's what we're going to be looking for. So we're going to run the data from March, April against the data we purchased just before the November election. We're looking to see where there are people who have been inactive for 20, 30 years, all of a sudden activated with a vote by mail ballot sent to a post office box and then harvested and turned in. And that's the information we're going to begin to provide to the judge or to Judicial Watch to work with us on this oversight. And then the settlement, of course, requires LA County to recontact the inactive registrants and move those who are ineligible. These laws are in place to protect us from being removed when we shouldn't be. Just because you haven't voted in 2 general elections doesn't mean that you can automatically be removed. You must receive a postcard. So every one of these inactives must receive a postcard first, so the registrars can make sure that they're not removing a legitimate voter. But if it's not a legitimate voter, in order to protect the integrity of the process, the inactives must be removed so they can't be used by someone willing to manipulate. You know, those of us who are honest people cannot even imagine that anyone would take an action to manipulate the outcome of elections. We've learned over 8 years, not everyone holds that same standard. And that's why there have to be laws in place and oversight to ensure that those who might be tempted to win an election by all means necessary do not have the opportunity to do it. Unfortunately, after 8 years of weakening integrity in California's election laws, the opportunity for those to manipulate the outcome has become greater and greater. All right, so what's next? We have so much more to be done. In 8 years of documentation, the lawsuit regarding the data research is the first case that we filed, and won. And by the way, Judicial Watch tells us that this is unprecedented, that a citizen group successfully filed legal action to compel the Secretary of State and the LA County Registrar to comply with the federal mandate to update and clean up, maintain their voter rolls. So what this says to us as citizens, if this is a constitutional republic, then it should be governed by we the people. We should have a voice in government, and that begins with being able to choose those who are governing and remove those who are corrupt. When we lose that ability, then we have to question if we have a constitutional republic, or are we now functioning as an oligarchy? Our concern is we are no longer functioning as a representative government because we're not sure about the outcome of the November elections. And not only are we not sure, but we have been contacted by 5 states who are so angry about what happened. They don't know the whys, but they certainly don't believe it was a fair and honest election. And they are talking about a class action lawsuit against the state of California. Many are already talking about legislation to prevent California from being involved in federal elections. The doubt of California's outcomes is so great that it is beyond citizens flapping and twirling and worrying about nothing. This is a very serious issue, and that's why this case is so important. Nobody ever saw a win coming out of California, and so it made a difference to document. Next, we're going to be leveraging the 8 years of documentation we have. We are deeply, deeply concerned about the motor voter. In 2015, when the legislative body was talking about that, we wrote a position paper saying this is dangerous. We laid out what we thought would happen. We were so concerned about it that Ruth, our Vice President and Director of Education and Training, we met with an attorney for 2 hours laying out all of the documentation we had up until 2015, showing them what could happen with the motor voter. We wrote a position paper to the legislative body detailing it. And not only did we do that, but the DMV did that. They laid everything out before the legislative body and said, we can't do this. We're not equipped. Our software can't handle it. And yet it was passed anyway. We have to wonder why. There are so many problems in the DMV, and I'm going to tell you in another slide over here what we saw in 2018. And then we ran the data and the research on it, and the indications are that the DMV was part of the problem. So we have 8 years of documentation that we are going to leverage. We're looking at taking action to stop or end or repeal or change the DMV system, the new motor voter. That has to be addressed. We are going to go after ballot harvesting, and I'm going to take a little bit going forward. I'm going to really tell you about what happened in voter harvesting and our documentation. And then we have several other issues. You all probably don't know this, but in 2015, we filed a civil rights hearing, a U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. We had a hearing in LA County, August 28th, 2015. Any of you hear about it? No. That was supposed to be a public hearing that was a well-kept secret. In 2014, there was an effort to get photo voter ID on the ballot. Some of you might have been part of that. The woman, Nancy Eisenhardt, who led that effort, in her travels met with some of the people who were part of the United States Commission on Civil Rights. And she was invited to fill a vacant spot on that commission. So she graciously accepted, and once accepted, she said she would like to look into the integrity of California's elections, because she happened to know What they need to know is were you harmed. So across the state, we are making it possible for candidates or citizens to provide documentation to these attorneys to let them know if you were harmed. So what is harm? So if you are a candidate and you were winning by big numbers on election night, and then all of a sudden you lose, just like Dan was talking about this way back when. So this is not a new thing. If you believe you lost because there may have been activity that prevented you from getting a fair and honest election, you were harmed. They want to hear from you. If you were a citizen who had your registration changed without your knowledge or permission, that's illegal. Nobody can change that. Now, we're not saying somebody's changing it for you. Our documentation is that DMV is the biggest culprit of it. We have 2,000 incident reports, citizen reports, and witness statements that came in that we sat for 3 days, 12-hour days, documenting each incident report, matching it to the corresponding law, election law, or if there was something else, criminal law, we put a question mark for the attorneys to look at it. We have 400 that came into the website. That's still up there, and I'll tell you how to do that if you want to go to the website and tell your story. Out of the 2,400 reports, we gave them to our chief analyst, who is amazing. She entered them, and then she ran queries to see the pattern, and there it was. Of the reports that came in, the large majority of them had visited the DMV to either get a license or renew or do something. We knew it when they were going to pass that law. The DMV said, don't do it, we can't handle it. Our legislative body did it anyway. And we want to see some kind of action taken to end this and go back to the old way until they can come up with something better. But this cannot be continued just because it's too hard to end it. So it may take, again, court action, and that's what we're prepared to do. We will file as many court actions on every one of the issues we've documented until we can return integrity to California's electoral process and restore faith by every citizen here, regardless of party affiliation, that when you cast a ballot, it's going to be counted, and that if you lose a race, it was fair and honest, and it's okay, you can handle it. We all can handle a loss. We just can't handle a theft. If you were harmed, you can go to the website, EIP-Ca.com. We have a survey that will help us to help you answer the questions. We also have citizen incident statements. You can download them. There's a PDF version. Fill it out, sign it, and then email it to the office. This new firm are meeting on the 26th to finalize all the pieces to the firm. They will be ready for action by February. And so we will be able to take your documentation that you mail to us, we'll meet with this firm, and we'll put in place a strategy to help them to take action on behalf of citizens who have believed for a long time that their voice is no longer counted. Okay, and there's the website. Okay, when you get to the website, I put a picture of it so you can make sure you're on the right website. If you go to Voter Integrity Project, you're on Jay Delancey's website. He's out in North Carolina. He's pretty amazing. We networked. He's one of the 5 state organizations that we've networked with for 5 years, or no, 8 years since we started. But Jay sends me all kinds of citizen information from California, because if you type in Voter Integrity Project, you don't get here, because we are Election Integrity Project, and now Election Integrity Project California. We're going to start to use our website as a hub of information. In 8 years, no matter how far we've traveled, we are missing too many people in California. They don't know because the media is not telling them. They're not, and no matter how many people you tell, you can't reach your whole community. So we're going to ask you to push this website out. We have critical information on the website. Our goal is to educate California citizens, especially about the new Voters' Choice Act, which I'm going to educate you on today. But citizens really need to be aware of what that is. There's some really good stuff in there, but there's some really questionable and challenging issues that we'd like to see addressed. But this is the website. Our press release is there. Our upcoming press release will be there. We have an article coming out probably Monday or Tuesday on ballot harvesting. So everything that we put there, you can download it and make copies and pass it out. Let's talk real quickly about ballot harvesting. I've already mentioned that what is now being considered ballot harvesting used to be the law that let me have someone take my ballot in. And some have said, well, what took place in California in 2018 wasn't illegal because ballot harvesting was made legal. What took place in our elections was not simple taking someone's ballot because they couldn't get there. Our documentation indicates serious issues. This change of the wording opened up the door to so much manipulation, and that's exactly what happened. People had report to us that they were intimidated. People came to their door and they didn't feel like they could say no. They're vulnerable populations, people who live, seniors who live in facilities or disabled who live in facilities. They didn't feel they could say no. Students on in campuses who maybe didn't fit in with the crowd didn't feel that they could say no. When they were told, we're all going down to X room or the cafeteria, we're going to vote together and all, and then this guy over here is going to take your ballots in for you. There was so coercion and intimidation that those who would normally not have taken that action felt that they couldn't say no. Everything about this law has to be repealed immediately. But the biggest issue with the ballot harvesting is what's going to show up in the new law, the ballot center, what is it called, the vote center model. Okay, and I want to actually move forward into that because that's what it's going to tie together. Because I've already talked enough about ballot harvesting in that we know that millions were harvested. LA County alone had a 400% increase in provisional ballots. Just LA County. Again, what happened to the thousands and thousands of missing vote-by-mail ballots? Once upon a time, California had a very simple model of voting. We had one day for elections. We had paper ballots. We put those paper ballots in a sealed box. They went into a counting machine, and we had same-day results. Remember those days? Anybody?
Yeah.
And at one point, we had ID.
Yeah.
Today's voting is so complicated. In an effort to make sure everybody can register, not just legitimate. I mean, you look at the wording of this, everybody can register. It has become incredibly complicated. We have 29 days of voting. We vote in every manner, paper, electronic, you name it. Ballots are delivered in all kinds of ways. We have 60 days of ballot processing, and I want you to hang on to that because we're going to spend some time on that. 60 days to process your ballot. And then we have delayed results. How many people thought one candidate won on election night only to wake up and find out someone else won? It was stunning. And like I say, it was not only Californians who were stunned, it was people from the other states. This is our concern with the future of the Voters' Choice Act, SB 450. SB 450 eliminates the neighborhood polling places. It says every registrant in that county a vote-by-mail ballot. Okay, now I've just laid out for you how many extra inactives are on the rolls. So if we're going to send a vote-by-mail ballot to every single person on the voter rolls, how do we know that they're going to end up in a voter's hands? And if they don't end up in a voter's hands, where are they going to end up? And if all those vote-by-mail ballots are floating around, those who harvested them in 2018 are, you bet, prepared on how to harvest them going forward. This is how it works. Election day to 10 days out, up to election day 4 days out. So from the 10th day out to the 4th day out, there should be, what we're told, there'll be one vote center for every 50,000 voters. From the 3rd day out up to election day, there'll be one for every 10,000 voters. If you happen to live close to one of these, you're in good shape. But what if you don't? What if you don't drive? What if you're a senior? What if you're handicapped? How are you going to get there? Well, the county registrars that we've talked to already say, oh, they can just mail their vote-by-mail ballot in. So the only option to the most vulnerable populations are they can mail it in. And of course, our documentation is the more it has to be processed, the greater possibility of manipulation. The cornerstone, again, is that we have a right to choose. To ensure your right to choose, the safest way to vote is in-person, paper ballot in a box. The most vulnerable absolutely do not have that choice anymore. Now, the vote center model includes 3 ways to vote. You actually can vote in person at the vote center. 5 counties were involved in a pilot program in 2018. Our report from the 5 counties is that in the 11 days where people could go to the vote centers, almost nobody went. They were empty because everyone got the vote by mail ballot in the mail. And without education and information, what did they think they were going to do with it? Mail it in. It's a vote by mail ballot. Or they thought it would be the same pattern like normal, you just take it and drop it off. If you don't want to mail it, you take it and drop it off. But they weren't told they could actually still vote in person. And there were a lot of angry citizens in those counties because they would have preferred to vote in person. The unfortunate part of this is the data is going to make it look like nobody cared to vote in person. But it was the lack of education. It's because they tried to push it out so quickly. The other thing is you can drop off your vote by mail ballot. Okay, one of the positives is it should reduce the number of provisional ballots, and that is really good, and that's very important. Apparently, every poll I keep wanting to say poll because that's what we meant. Anyway, there should be an electronic polling book, so no matter where you are in the county, if you go to a vote center, they should be able to look you up in the poll book, and it will indicate what district you are and which ballot belongs to you, and they should either print that out or come out on a machine depending on how your county is going to do it. That would help by not having provisional ballots because the provisional ballots have to be processed. The other is there should be fewer poll workers. This is a challenge for our county registrars across the state to actually, as our populations get larger, finding those polling locations, finding the poll workers first, training them has been a big challenge. So this should help a little bit with staffing and personnel and ensuring that everyone is trained properly. It should be easier to find polling locations because I understand they're now going to use public facilities like libraries and schools where there might be better parking. So some of these issues might become better with the facilities. And it's only 11 days instead of 29 days. Questions at the end. I'll catch you at the end, okay? The problem, our voter rolls are not maintained. Again, how many vote by mails are going to be floating out there and harvested? We have the new motor voter. So even though LA County and every county now will be working on updating and cleaning up their voter rolls, while that's happening at the top, they're cleaning up the voter rolls, the new motor voter is going to be registering all manner of people and filling them with illegitimate registrations the way they're already doing. So until we get this straight, we should not be sending vote by mail ballots out to every person on the voter rolls. Disinterested voters may probably discard their ballots, and this is a concern. We actually recycle paper here. So people who didn't want to vote, throw it in the recycle bin, it goes to the recycling centers of thousands of vote by mail ballots, LA County alone. They have to process them. What's involved in processing is they've got to be run through the machine first to check for signatures. We have documentation in several southern counties where the machine was broken and they were crushing and crunching the ballots. When that happens, those ballots have to be remade because they can't be run through the reader, through the counter. When they have to be remade, our documentation in 8 years is not everyone who makes those ballots is honest. So if a ballot has to be remade, we've observed where the two people step aside to, one reads the ballot, one marks the clean ballot. It doesn't always get marked as the voter intended. So you do not want to vote by mail if you don't have to. Why everyone is pushing us to vote by mail when it is so easily manipulated. 2 election commissions have already said the least protected ballot is the vote by mail ballot. This is the National Election Commission already documented. Don't do it. California continues to push it. If your vote by mail ballot has to be processed so much, go through the machine, then it goes through people who are looking for smudges or wasn't marked with the right implementation, up, it's not going to go through the counter, now it goes over to the remake. And we have some of our observers who watched the processing of the ballots told us that they were going through this so fast that ballots were just tossed into the remake, just like this. Because anything that didn't look like it'd go through, they had a deadline to get through all those vote by mail ballots and the provisional ballots. These are envelope ballots that have to be processed. They just stopped checking carefully and put it into the remake because it was determined it was faster to remake them than to actually go through each one and determine if they would go through the counter. Okay, those who use the mail ballot have no assurance that their vote is counted as they cast it, counted at all, or not diluted or canceled by an illegal ballot. And what I mean by counted at all, there was a recount in one of the southern counties, no, it's actually the coast counties, where they were doing a recount. And after doing all the ballots that had come in, there was a box of ballots sitting on the side. And one of the gals said, well, what's in that box? And they said, well, those are all the ballots that have to be processed. We got as far as we could, and we don't have time to process, and then the deadline came. If you were one of those, your ballot was in the box, and it didn't get counted. So they asked if they could contact those voters and ask how they intended to vote, and the county clerk said, fine. But if they had not asked that, all those voters would have thought their ballot was counted, but it wasn't. And so, again, we have great concerns with the high numbers of vote-by-mail ballots, and maybe our registrars might help us to figure out what is a better way to help people vote in a safe way to ensure that your ballot counts. And of course, the most simple thing, if the transformer goes out, it's all electronic, it goes down, and that way, then you're going to have problems with the machine. More and more, we are seeing a voter's loss of connection with their electoral process. More and more ballots, by going to vote by mail, it's becoming more like paying a bill. You know, you get it in the mail, you got to just go through it, put it in the mail, okay, done, next, groceries, whatever else you have to do. So the comprehension of the importance of voting and what it means is being separated, people's connectivity with it, being involved in it, ensuring it's fair and honest. Maybe that's what has to happen. The citizens in every community need to step up and help the registrars and be poll workers, be supervisors, get the job done, make it not so hard for us to go back to the simple neighborhood polling locations. Just a thought. We're encouraging everyone across the state, as these meetings are being had with either the Board of Supervisors or the registrars, to get involved, ask the questions, relay your concerns. We provided a lot of our concerns to you. Look into it and see if you have more concerns. Every county seems to be doing it a little bit differently, and so we're not going to speak to county by county, but you happen to have your registrar here, so he's going to be the one who's going to give you the answers for Placer County. Be involved, be vigilant, be proactive, plan to be an observations volunteer. We are going to focus on ballot processing because of the huge issues that came out of both the primary and the November elections in 2018. And I want you to keep this in mind. Stalin said it's not enough that it is enough that people know there was an election. The people who cast the votes, though, decide nothing. The people who count the votes decide everything. And that is, in fact, the reality. When your ballot can be remade or tossed in a box, or having gone through where everyone can see how you voted and what party you are, if someone has an ulterior motive, it's not that difficult to decide that it has to be remade. I mean, all of us have the right to a private vote. That is the difference between what's happening now. What's happening now is we are being forced into a collectivist form of voting. Everyone gets together. How are you voting? What do you do? What happened to the private individual vote? That's what this country was based upon. Individual responsibility, individual voice, privacy of our ballot. That's being eliminated through the new process, this future of California elections. EIP-Ca has protested that since its first meeting back in 2014, but we don't have enough voices laying out our concern for being forced into a collectivist form of voting. And you have Ron Paul, who says you have to watch those scumbags count the ballots. little humor. This is sometimes a little heavy, but all of what I've told you, I want you to go back to the fact that we, the people in California, had the biggest win possible for an NBRA case. We, the citizens of California, did that. It's not just us, it's not just me. It truly is the effort of 9,000 citizens across the state who helped document the issues in California's elections, and this is just the first step to go forward. Our focus is every lawfully cast vote accurately counted, and that is what we must continue to do. People have asked all through the state, how can we help? What can we do? Two ways, and people want to say, how can we support you? What's the next step? So two things, we're going to have someone pass this around, but I want to tell you what's in it. We have cards for those who say, you know, I want to get involved in some degree. What can I do? We must expand our data team. We are now going to be overseeing this lawsuit, and we've already got to start running millions of lines of data in comparison. If you're a data analyst or a programmer, we'd love to see if you might be interested in volunteering with us. Ruth, who's been our Director of Education and Training, is now becoming the Director of Legislative Oversight, because we have already documented, in the 8 years we did this, 2012, 2013 and 14, we provided critical information about weaknesses in the electoral process. Do you know our legislative body made those things legal by 2014, by 2015? So we no longer give them our reports because we're no longer confident that we won't see more laws passed that say, oh great, with that weakened the electoral process, let's make that a law. We have to change that somehow. So we're going to focus on legislation. We're going to use our website to alert citizens across the state if there are more laws coming down that continue to remove the integrity in our process. And we're going to alert you if finally legislators say, you know what, we're going the wrong direction. Let's pass some legislation that restores integrity of the process. We want to let you know so that you can let your legislators know that's what we want. We're looking for research. As we take these other cases forward, we might need those who have sort of a background in reading laws or understanding research and how to go deeper to see patterns when they began. So if you like that, you can indicate that. And then bottom line, we need to rebuild our teams across the state. So many have left the state that the 40 counties that we had teams in, we now have mostly teams in the 7 counties. But to do this audit, we're going to need coordinators and assistant coordinators who will help organize citizens just in your own community. We might need to knock on some doors. We might need to make some phone calls. You know, what was your voting experience? Did you get your vote by mail? Did someone change it without your knowledge or permission? We need to get this information so we know how to run the data, because we're looking at millions of lines of data that will help us hone in on what we need to look at. And then, of course, just your basic observer. If you'd like to participate, we're going to start training you in observing the electoral process now, early on, before 2020, when you feel it's too much information, I can't get it. So we're going to change the way we do our training to give everyone time to learn it. And you can go to the website and learn it even on your own so that you can get involved. And then the last thing is people have asked, how can I contribute? How can I donate? So we are now a 501c3. Ruth came up with these cards. As a 501, we need to send everyone a receipt for your taxes. So if you're donating cash, people in the past have said, well, I just have $5 and I'd like to throw that in. Well, we'd like to still give you credit for that. So you just fill out the information. This will tell us your address so we can mail you your tax receipt at the end of the year. We are so appreciative for whatever you have, and if you don't have, please do not feel pressure to give. Everyone is struggling and hurting. California is still struggling with jobs, and we get that. So we appreciate every dime that comes in. We are an all-volunteer organization. Still to this day, none of us take a salary. Every penny goes to the work. And right now we need to buy a larger server, where other states are asking us to run California data against their state. They're concerned that bordering states of California are going into their states and voting. Well, we happen to know that's true. We've already documented that by 2014. So now we need to help those states take action. So anything that you'd like to do to participate, fill out a card and just fill it out, put it back, or bring it up here. And so anyway, if there's a couple of gals who can help to pass them, thank you. And then maybe what we'll do now is take some questions.
I just have one thing to say. If you have put any money, checks, cash in the jars outside, that was going to be for the rental of a room, which we've taken on personally. If you want to leave it that way, that's fine. If you want your check, or if you have a bigger donation and you want a receipt for that, then get that. You can fill this out or get it out in the front afterwards. Otherwise, we're going to bring these around so you can make a donation, definitely, to election integrity.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And while you're doing that, one real quick thing. There's going to be, we are asking to meet with the president about this issue. I'm about to say that. I need to move this slide further up. We are so concerned about what's happening, and the other states are so concerned that we've already begun reaching out to Congress and to those who are connected with Congress and our attorneys. We are asking for a town hall with the president to lay out for him all the documentation that we in California have documented. J. Christian Adams says that we are the canary in the coal mine. No other state is doing this. And he said our work here is the best in the nation. He wants us to push this out and train other states. But in order to do that, we're going to ask for a rally in DC in the spring, and all the states are going to join that and demand the restoration of integrity to elections in every state in the union. So we'll keep you informed on that. To go to the website to get our information. With the town hall, we're going to work with the attorneys and already have prepared the weaknesses in the federal laws. Well, I'm not doing that. The attorneys are doing that. We're going to provide that information directly to the president if we can get that town hall in the spring and lay it out and make it easy. Here is what is destroying integrity in the elections and causing people to stop voting because they don't trust the system. Here's what can be done to fix it. We might need your help in contacting a website. Well, we're going to need to insist. Californians, for the most part, are invisible. We're laughed at. They don't realize how hard we've all worked to keep the constitutional republic in place. We're going to have to be loud. We don't have to be obnoxious. We don't have to destroy anything. But we do have to be visible. And we have to make sure that the president knows, that Congress knows, we want action. We have the evidence and we want action. So we'll walk you through how to do that when we get there. Okay, now questions.
I'm a car guy. All cars, when they're first registered, have about a 6-digit license number, followed the following year when they re-register by about 12 digits on their tag for the next year. Why couldn't every vote turn-in ballot have a secret code with a number and letter code in it that wouldn't be available to anybody unless they were doing checking out some falsity? Wouldn't it help to be able to secure an area?
So here's what I would suggest. Some of those questions I don't have the answer to, but if you've got a good suggestion, see, these are the things you can go to our website under Contact EIP-Ca and write that down. Write down the suggestion. I would also say, if you've got a registrar who seems to be concerned and interested, these are ideas you can share with your registrar who can then communicate with the Secretary of State. We're going to work on the things we have authority over, but there's a lot of ideas that we can follow that could be suggestions.
I work every election and I'm an inspector at polling booth. Please, I work every election as an inspector at the polling booth. Why don't we ask for ID?
Well, we tried already. Let me answer your question. 2014, California tried to pass a photo voter ID. We did not get the signatures on it because the write-up was changed by the Attorney General. It was written in a way that said it was going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, which it would not have. So it went down because of a miswriting of what the bill was. We can try that again. We can try
Let's reinstate it, because there's a lot of people, we were instructed. I met Mr. Ronco a couple of times, every time I go for training, they instruct us just to say thank you very much. Don't say, no, we don't need it.
Well, that's the law. So that's the law. So to change the law, we have to keep working on it. Everyone, please, I forgot to say this, not too many stories or we'll be here all night. So try to get right to the question as succinct as you can. If you've got a great suggestion, we all agree, and that's growing nationwide. The demand for photo voter ID by all parties. People have had enough. They feel that they're being lied to when they say, oh, it'll suppress the vote. Nobody believes that. So we need to keep pushing for it. Okay.
The other thing is, I don't feel comfortable with these little boxes that are scattered like there's one up here at Lincoln Hills. Who knows what happens with those boxes? I'm sorry, I was angry when I found out about those. They've got to be done away with.
So you want to meet with your registrar on that. Yeah, EIP-Ca doesn't have authority over that, but we'll bring the attention to it and you talk to those who do have authority.
I'd like to know who is overseeing the voter machines. Is there anybody checking voter machines, and there any weaknesses of being hacked?
There are other organizations that do that, so that's not something that we have the bandwidth to do. It is something if we had staffing that we would like to do, but I know there's a lot of question about the machine, so that's something that we could look to if we had funding or people who have that expertise, so.
I know that there's an SB.
Hold on, he's going to bring you a mic.
Oh, great. Is that SB 450 that you were talking about going to wipe out the fact of sending ballots by mail? Because I do know that two things. One, the county of Sacramento sent everybody a ballot by mail, whether they asked for it or not.
That's standard, that's how it's going to be.
And then California, supposedly, my son-in-law is a bureau chief for Los Angeles Times. And he told me that all of California, that's all they're going to do is vote by mail.
Unless we can stop it. You know, we still are citizens, and we have the right to say no. But I'll tell you what, unless we have the ability to vote out those who are putting this stuff in, then we don't have the right to say no. That's what it comes down to, and that's why fair and honest elections are critical, is that we restore that integrity.
Oops, I got the microphone.
Okay, just
Over here. I got the microphone.
Okay, then, oh, you do, okay, then
I'll share.
next. Okay.
I just wanted to call everybody's attention to, there's an editorial in the Wall Street Journal. It brings up everything that she's talking about that's going on in California, but it further mentions that Congress, the Democratic House, is making it their #1 priority to institute everything that's going on in California in every state of the union. So this came out on Saturday. It was yesterday's Wall Street Journal. I encourage you to look at that. We'll try to get it out to our email list.
And then you're going to want to watch what we're doing. We're working with Christian Adams to put out our own editorial on that one. California, as Christian has said, California citizens stand in a position we're not even aware of. Everyone is looking to California because nobody expected this case to be won because it was filed on behalf of a citizen organization. We all have the documentation, but our press release, Christian Adams is going to push it out. He's going to walk it into the highest levels of Congress, the report we're just working on now. We have to protest this, even in California. If we protest it, if we have a loud enough voice, then the other states are going to know that we're not supporting Congress in that because we know what's happening. Okay, over here.
So just some brief good news. First off, there was voter fraud found in the Alabama Senate special election. Bureau of Care Politics did a piece on it. There should be a lawsuit being brought against that. Also, my home state of Arizona, Maricopa County Recorder, I spoke with the Attorney General, and I spoke with the Governor, I spoke with the legislature. We are bringing a lawsuit against him to end the ballot system in Arizona. You can return a ballot to the polls if it's mail. So hopefully I can work with the legislature and get that done. But good news there.
And I will put you in touch with Vera Anderson. We have been mentoring her for 10 months. She's launching Election Integrity Project Arizona. And so now that there's now an effort in Arizona to do what we're doing. The problem is Arizona doesn't have the right to observe the electoral process. That's the first thing that has to take place. You need to have the right to do what we're doing. But that's very good news. Thank you. Okay. Over here.
Angela, you have a question?
You need
Thank
a,
you, Linda, for all you do. I appreciate that.
Maya.
Hi. So I know that, and correct me, when Trump came into office, he disbanded the Voter Fraud Commission, and then he started a new one. What is happening with that? Because I know that Alex Padilla has refused to give the information, and where are we going from there?
He didn't actually start a new one. The commission was actually sent to Homeland Security, which we think was a good move. The last open hearing that they had was called the New Hampshire hearing. Ed Dale is a gentleman out in New Hampshire who's been documenting the fraud of New Hampshire for 20 years. They didn't even have him testify when they were right there in his own home state, about 20 years of documented evidence. In New Hampshire, people drive in from the neighboring states. They're allowed in New Hampshire to simply say they're moving there. They give an address of someone who lives there or a headquarters of something, and they get to vote. So every state has their own way of manipulating the outcome. But here's the thing. It went to Homeland Security, which we applaud. After watching the last commission meeting, we watched 3 gentlemen who were statisticians talking about all the data nationwide, this about road rolls here and there and the other. Not one of those statisticians brought into their research California's elections. And we have been making this public for a long time. They didn't even have to come to us. They could have found it. But if they would have added the numbers to what's happening in California's databases, they would have found the same millions of inactives, and that would have changed the total rosy picture that they laid out in that commission. So at that point, it seemed to me that those on the commission, was it going to be just another feather in their cap? But it truly was not a true commission telling the truth. If they didn't include California, it was not going to be a true picture. So it's good it went there. We are going to actually reach out to Homeland Security because we know that's where the commission is. So there's two departments that we're going to reach out to. One I already told you about, the Department of Justice. We want that civil rights hearing brought forward. But we're going to reach out to Homeland, and that's why we feel we have to go to Congress now. We want to reach out to them, and we want to provide our evidence directly to them. We believe what's happening here in California could potentially constitute a security issue, a sovereignty issue. So these will have credible evidence about what happens to a state when citizens lose the ability to choose those who will govern and remove those who are corrupt. So that's where we're at with it now.
You mentioned something earlier about verifying signatures. I heard in California that they really don't do that very well, or they don't do it. Is there a mandate to verify signatures on ballots?
Well, I think they attempt to do it to the best of their ability. Honestly, if you've ever had a chance to observe that process, it is a very difficult thing. And the reason for that is the massive increase of ballots that have to have signature verification. So number one, it is impossible to train enough staffing, especially in the big counties, to actually know what to look for in verifying signatures. Second, there was a mandate that came down, was it 2012 or somewhere earlier in there, I can't recall the date, but bottom line, they said to those doing signature verification, if you're going to err, you must err on the side of the voter. So what that meant is if they saw a signature that maybe could, maybe not, whatever, if there was any question, they had to let it go as counted because they had to err on the side of the voter. So it became so subjective. So the 5 points of signature verification became 3. I don't know if it's 2 now, what it is, but the real issue is speed. See, the 60-day election season that we have, it has a deadline. It ends on this day in which it all has to be done. So those big southern counties, I think, and Fresno County is a large county, every county has a huge number of ballots to process, both vote by mail and provisional. They have to get the job done. They have to move fast. So our question is, how can you possibly truly verify the signatures when it has to go so fast? And then the second thing is, the signatures that they're often verifying are the ones in the DMV. Well, that little box that you sign in the DMV, at the time my signature looks like a 5th grader. So how in the world do they know for sure it's mine? Everything about California's electoral process needs to be revamped and made simpler, but that's an issue.
I've been an observer before, and what the rules are from our registrar's office, you can't see what's going on. Where they make you stand, how they make you stand, what you can do, what you can't do, how close you can be. It's all for naught. I mean, you really can't tell what you're doing.
My opinion, that comes from lack of training from the Secretary of State's office to the registrars. It's on the website of the Voter Bill of Rights. Clearly states that observers have the right to stand close enough to observe the actual process. But too many of our registrars are not trained in that. So what the standard they're going by is they have to protect the integrity and the privacy of the voter. So often that might be, some we know they're just saying, we don't want you here, go stand 10 feet, 15 feet over there.
That's pretty much
Now, Nevada County had a civil rights citizen grand jury in 2014 on that very issue. Now, they had drawn little square boxes 15, 20 feet away and said if you step out of that box, even to go to the restroom, you're done for the day. So we testified at that citizen grand jury, and the citizens won on that because we laid out for them that's not what observation means. You can stand 15 feet away and say, well, this is happening here, there, and there, but that can't tell you what's happening. Observing the process means seeing it close enough to know if it's whatever, if the process is being lawfully followed. So again, that would be an incident report. If you were to say this is what happened to me, I tried to observe, it wasn't clear, then that helps us to know or to dig down into what's happening. I do know from hearing from many registrars, they don't get the training, they're very confused about the observation program, and simply putting it on the Voter Bill of Rights in California seems to have helped some, but not others. Okay.
Why not just do a national ID card? We all have a social security number, that we get one person, one vote.
Well, is we have to, that would have to go in the updated federal laws. So that's where we're going to push Congress to put it, or Homeland, or the town hall president. We absolutely believe that has to be photo voter ID. We've been documenting impersonation of the voter since 2010.
I just got my new license that has a thumbprint and ID, and that's supposed to be used for airports and that. I mean, that way I
The
can
real
go
ID.
in one state.
Right.
Wherever I go, I have my signature, my ID, and
There is a way to solve it, but I think our Congress and our president and Homeland and everyone who's in a position to make these decisions, they have to know what we want, and we're silent and invisible most of the time. We're busy living our lives, for heaven's sakes. But we have to change that. We have to insist upon it. We're going to try to give you a way in California to do that.
Well, I'm from Nevada County, and that was actually my report in observing the elections. I actually watched a dead person's ballot be processed while I was there. I wanted to know, having had to deal with the mandatory vote-by-mail ballots, if you're going to be taking any new reports of what happened, because I did observe the vote centers, and adding that to the process. But I think bottom line, we've got to change the legislation. All this watching, all this observing, all this report making, all this data collection is not going to make one bit of difference unless we can change the legislation. And I think we need a national lawsuit against the state of California that is passed through the Help America Vote Act. Something of that stature to bring some attention to our issues.
And that's exactly what we're doing. We have multiple suits already lined up, exactly looking at that. We are looking at what's called an Article 4, Section 4 case. The Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution states that the federal government is to ensure that every state has a Republican form of government. Now, that's not the party, it's the constitutional republic. A constitutional republic is based on the very cornerstone that citizens can self-govern, starting with choosing those who will govern. Again, when we lose that, we don't have a constitutional form of Republican form of government. I've already talked to three of our attorneys, Judicial Watch, Landmark, and Christian Adams, and I presented this to them, and they said, well, 2 states during our history have already filed Article 4, Section 4, one in the 1800s, one in the early 1900s. The Supreme Court ruled not in favor of the states, saying they didn't believe that the states had lost the ability to have a constitutional republic form of government. And I said, yeah. And he said, the Supreme Court doesn't like to rule against itself. I said, yeah, but I think California set precedents. What happens in California, what's been happening, likely did not happen in the other 2 states in the 1800s and the early 1900s. So we're gonna press to file Article 4, Section 4. We're gonna demand a federal investigation into the state, and the state's election procedures, into the results of what's happened to the state. Some of you may have met with the Landmark Legal Foundation attorney that I drove throughout the state in 2017 for 6 days. He met with people all over the state, citizens who've been documenting loss of constitutional right, parental rights, property rights, you name it. That information, he has been filing complaints with the Department of Justice for over a year now. Those complaints are going to the same place our civil rights hearing went. We're hoping with the new Attorney General that there might be some movement forward on that. So that documentation is still not gone. Those of you who met with him, it's still being worked on. But that will be used in an Article 4, Section 4 case if we get it filed.
Okay, I have a concern. I have a special needs child, and whenever we go to Alta Regional, they always ask us, does he want to register to vote? So they're always pushing that on these kids who, to be honest with you, some of them, my child does, but some of the kids, I mean, they wouldn't even have a way to understand voting at all. But they're pushing it that way. That's a concern, maybe something to watch. The second thing I want to say is when my husband and I went to vote this year, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not used to that, but when my husband and I went to vote this year, he was told that he had a mail-in ballot and that he had to do a provisional because, and it's the first time ever. And not only, the funny thing was, is as we walked in and he was being told that, another gentleman walked in and he was told the same thing. And the gentleman who was working the election said that they had had many of them all morning long, that they didn't know why this was happening. And they all said, and the gentleman that was running it said, have you been to the DMV lately? And they said, yes. So is my husband. So what you're saying is exactly what's going on. One more thing I want to say, I want to ask is, McClintock, Tom McClintock, have you had any correspondence with him?
We have met with legislators in the 8 years from all around the state. There has been an unwillingness for whatever reason to make election integrity a focal point. Both parties have not been willing to make that. Now, maybe now they will with the lawsuit. It's a political risk. I don't know if y'all know this to be politically incorrect. Well, voter integrity is politically incorrect because we've been accused for years of suppressing the vote. So our documentation has proven to this judge that we're not suppressing the vote, we're protecting the vote. Because it doesn't matter what party you are, when you've got these kinds of problems, you're subject to manipulation. So I'm hoping now with this case that we'll see legislators from both sides start to be concerned. Whoever your representation is, the representative is, contact them and press that they do something about this. So we don't know that they will, but if they don't hear from you, for sure they won't.
I have two quick questions.
Here.
The first is, you mentioned that media wasn't covering your website, your activities. Is there anything going on to be on social media, like Facebook or any of those? And have they suppressed your activities?
We've dealt with that, yep. And on the card, if you're a social media person who will help push out the press releases and the stories, yep, we tried to put out a press release about one of the Supreme Court rulings, and our normal count is about 9 to 10,000, went down to 900, 400, 500. So when we contacted Facebook, we asked about that. They said, well, we don't put out political stuff. And I said, it's a Supreme Court ruling. But I put a comment at the top. So they were going to have me fill out this form giving them all kinds of information, which I said, never mind. And I told my website, never mind. And we just waited it out. We're back up to normal again. So it's a lot of shenanigans. Again, we have great concern over the control of social media markets. We're one of many things.
Okay, the second question is, a few years back they had this vote where only the two top primary winners get forwarded onto the ballot. Is there any movement going on to repeal that? Because that doesn't allow us to really voice our opinions.
Yeah, EIP-Ca is going to tackle that. We have a list of laws in California we believe should be repealed, must be repealed, because it has destroyed the ability of citizens to choose who will govern. And again, it doesn't matter what party. So if you're one party and your only choice is two people from another party, they don't reflect your interests and your views. So it doesn't matter what party you're from. When you don't have the ability to choose who you're going to, who represents you, then we don't have a constitutional republic. And the thing is, please remember to say we are not a democracy. A democracy is a form of government in which 51%, that's the majority rule, 51% can tell the rest of the citizens to shut up and sit down. Our founders didn't put together a democracy. That's a talking point. We need to get rid of it, come against it. We have a very unique form of government. We are a constitutional republic. We have the right to choose and to self-govern. And if we can start to take back that narrative, then we can help others understand the difference between a democracy and a constitutional republican form of government. 51% right now in California are telling the rest of us to shut up and sit down. We have to say no.
Can we ask Jimmy Carter to bring in his international poll watchers?
I think ours do a better job, frankly.
Thank you very much. There's much more going on, I believe, than what we're even hearing here. When you went to get your real ID, and I'll ask the question in just a second, how was it marked? Was that square left empty? Did someone else later mark it Democrat, Republican? Or did they tell you that you would have to re-register because of what you just did? And I have a couple of ladies, we tried to get Kevin Kiley to take this forward, and I can get their names for you so they can report the issue with real ID. And I honestly believe, from a young man from Mexico, that California colluded with Mexico, and I want that brought out.
Whoever has reports, again, we don't do hearsay, so if you have someone who has a story to tell, go to the website, download the incident report, and that's where you say it. The important thing in the work we do is our incidents report includes the declarative statement, I declare under penalty of perjury that what I'm writing on this document is true and accurate. That is why we are trusted. We do not relay or share something that someone told who said what another. We don't do it. So if someone has something to say and your answer, can you keep reporting? Yes. We are, and that's why I'm driving all over the state. These attorneys need to hear from you. Our federal level attorneys need to hear from you. We need to build cases as quickly as possible. The California primary has been moved up to March. We have a short period of time to get these cases filed, and I'll tell you what, this new public interest law firm, they are excited. They think it'll be fun. You know why? They know we have the documentation to go across the finish line. That makes it fun for attorneys. By the way, if you are an attorney and have interest or a paralegal, please indicate that. They're going to need a lot more than 5 attorneys to go after all the identification that we have.
I would like you to also identify what the supermajority is, so when you're talking to someone who's a Democrat, they will not be, the word won't be used, it's all about words, how we use them. They won't feel like, oh my gosh, what is supermajority? Need to define supermajority.
That's not in our, let me just clarify, that is not in our purpose statement. As
okay.
Let me just, and real quick, because I know we're getting late, so you could ask a question what I relayed, because you might not really understand what we do. Our purpose statement is very narrow. It's the oversight of California's electoral process to ensure integrity. So,
but at least others can use it. And then also, if you could give us a list of speakers on ballot harvesting, I would like to have someone come and speak to my group about ballot harvesting.
I am glad you brought that up. We are going to be looking to train speakers in every county. Ruth and I cannot possibly reach out to everyone, so we're going to do 2 things. Again, the website is going to be the hub. Already there are presentations under the tab presentations, so every club can simply go to the presentation. We'll do electronic meetings, so Ruth or myself or Ellen can come on like a Zoom meeting, so that we could not travel the huge miles in the state. And then the others, we're going to put presentations on the website. Your club can go to the website and see which one is appropriate for what you're interested in.
Hey, Linda, I found it interesting in mainstream media every once in a while there's something about this, and I know that the DMV now has admitted that they've made mistakes with registration. That I believe it's the Secretary of State has said that he can't verify that illegals haven't voted in the primary, and it's got to be pretty bad if the mainstream media is bringing it up. Can you tell us maybe what's going on with all that?
Yeah, nobody can verify it. That's, again, one of our cases. That's one of our first cases. When that law was passed, the law allowed for, in fact, required the DMV to prevent that data from being shared with anyone else, including the Secretary of State. So he actually can't see it. So, and there are several law firms now that are going to go after that. That information should not be hidden, and that should be transparent. So, yep, it's a problem. And that's why it's not included in our research. We can't tell you how many non-citizens, both legal and illegal, actually voted. And if I can say one quick thing about that, we are very concerned for non-citizens who are here legally. They're attempting to become citizens. They go to the DMV to get a license. They end up being registered to vote without their knowledge or permission. It's sent to a post office box, and someone begins voting in their name. As they go through the process of becoming a citizen, when California scrutinizes their paperwork, they don't really care. But when it gets to the federal level, they're going to care. And when they see that this non-citizen registered to vote and was voting, they not only will not become a citizen, but they may be deported. So this manipulation, or this not manipulation, the actual broken system of the DMV is harming non-citizens who are here legally attempting to become citizens. It has to be addressed and corrected. Okay.
Hi there, thank you. For years, we watched a single-party ballot that we voted on, and it seemed to work pretty good. And then this year, we went with a dual-party ballot, and myself and everybody else thought that it smells fishy to us, and wondered if that, and how many problems has stemmed from that. I would think that a great many have. It's really easy to mess that up. Plus, a lot of people, that creates a disinterest in voting from what I've seen. And I think the dual-party ballot is no good. Myself and everybody I've talked to.
You see, that's another move to collectivism. So no, we're gonna challenge, EIP-Ca is gonna challenge every law and every mandate that takes us further and further away from a constitutional republic form of governing, including the way we vote, and we're gonna challenge it on a constitutional law basis. So everything that you're seeing and your concerns, please go to the website, write it down, do the survey for us, download this report, help us to get the critical information that these attorneys need so that together we can build as many strong cases as possible and correct as much as we can before 2020.
And last question.
Okay.
Thank you, Lauren.
All right, thank you everyone. I appreciate it.